And with us for the next 30 minutes, I'm joined by UKIP's William Dartmouth and Theresa Griffin for Labour. Now, let's take a look at one of these stories in more detail, this move to ban MEPs from taking paid lobbying jobs. William Dartmouth, I think a lot of people watching this will say, how was this ever allowed to happen in the first place?
It's all completely mysterious, but actually this is completely irrelevant because MEPs are still allowed to have outside jobs. So, for instance, the Brexit Parliament negotiator, Guy Verhofstadt, has got 4 outside jobs, one of which, according to the financial disclosures, pay more than €10,000 a month. So this is absolutely meaningless. But the significant thing about the Corbett report is this. It actually was there's been a series of procedural devices rammed through in order to suppress dissent in the Parliament, in order to have more of these laws.
Let's just stick to the lobbying side, because we've got a lot of. Well, I'm going to get another opinion. Is it relevant?
It is relevant because, I mean, it is extraordinary, and it's been my group's position all along that actually the job of an MEP is your only job, so that you can serve your constituents properly. But it's absolutely right that it's now been made explicitly clear that MEPs cannot act as lobbyists to the other institutions.
Were a lot of them doing it?
No. But
some did?
No, a handful did. But what we had to do is make it explicit that they couldn't anymore, and also that ex-MEPs shouldn't actually be able to come back and lobby the institutions straight away. That shouldn't happen.
But what about all these other outside jobs that William Dartmouth is saying?
Well, it was our position as the Social and Democrats that we actually wanted to have a one job only, but because it's consensual, we couldn't quite get to that position. But
so you can still do it. Do you have another job?
No, of course. I mean, being the MEP for a region like the North West is a full-time job.
No,
I'm in Brussels Monday to Thursday, and my region Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Do you have another job?
No, I don't. I'm looking for one, though, because we're all going to be out of there in 2 years. And what I find utterly mysterious is that the Labour MEP, Richard Corbett, who's also going to be out of there for 2 years, has basically spent 2 years of his mandate pushing through this complicated procedural package, which is all about suppressing dissent. It's all about suppressing dissent.
Right, that's
the
fine,
main
but
thing.
that's not what I was asking you about.
I know it wasn't, but it's an important question.
Yeah, but I asked the questions and you meant to answer them.
It's to make the Parliament more
we've run out of time on this too. See, I've got trouble with both of them today. It's not just Brexit preoccupying Europe at the moment. Meeting in Brussels this week, members of the European Council covered the gamut of big issues in their end-of-year summit, cramming some meaty subjects into just one day of talks. Following the talks, EU leaders strongly condemned the targeting of civilians and hospitals in Aleppo, as you would expect them to, criticising Russia and Iran for supporting the Syrian regime. Existing economic sanctions on Russia over her Crimean invasion were extended for 6 months, but a push for extra sanctions over her support for the Syrian regime was rejected. Leaders endorsed plans for greater defence cooperation, including creating a new mini-military HQ, battle groups of troops from member states, and joint procurement of drones and helicopters. Council members also discussed extending a deal to pay some countries to limit the number of migrants coming to Europe from Pakistan, Afghanistan and Egypt, though a decision was put back to a later date. That often happens at summits. Brexit only came up at the informal dinner after Theresa May had left, where the remaining 27 states discussed their negotiating position in private without Mrs May. Following the summit, Council President Donald Tusk spoke about how the EU could not end the Syrian conflict by force. This is what he had to say.
It's impossible to stop this conflict by force. The EU has no intentions and no capacities to use this kind of measures or methods. But please stop blaming the EU, because for sure the EU, member states, the Europeans are not the reason why we witness today this tragedy in Aleppo and other parts of Syria.
So we've got carnage in Syria, terrible things going on in Aleppo. We've got the US president thinking that the Kremlin tried to interfere in the US elections this year. What did this summit do?
I think it should have gone further. I mean, we extended, quite rightly, the sanctions in terms of Ukraine for 6 months.
It didn't toughen them.
but didn't toughen them. I personally believe we should have toughened them. However, in terms of Syria, we should have imposed sanctions on Russia in terms of their action in Syria and Aleppo. We have seen intolerable suffering with people being bombed out of their homes and their local communities. Those sanctions, by the way, shouldn't be against the Russian people. It should be against the oligarchs, the oil companies, the people actually taking the decisions in Putin's government.
What did this summit achieve?
Very little. There's always these EU summits happening. Now, on Syria, of course, everybody shares the deep concern about the suffering that's going on. But the point I'd like to share with you is that the EU is not the right structure to attempt to do anything about it. There needs to be, it should be the United Nations, it should be between the United States and Russia.
How can it be the United Nations?
It should be the United States.
When Russia has a veto in the Security Council.
Absolutely.
It's still a forum on which they can talk. But anyway, it doesn't invalidate the point that the EU is completely the wrong structure. And Donald Tusk was right to say they haven't got the capacity anyway.
Well, he seemed to be kind of putting up an Aunt Sally saying, don't blame the EU. I mean, no one's blaming the EU for what's happened. It's the reaction to it.
We could do more.
That may be the case. Don't you need the EU? If you're going to have sanctions against Russia, and we have some, people you think they're inadequate, but to make sure everybody's in for these, don't you need the EU?
Yes, absolutely. But I mean, I think that's our position at the moment, that we should negotiate this further. I mean, we have been witness to intolerable suffering. We have to have sanctions, not against the Russian people, but against the regime.
But again, the EU has done no more than what it's been doing already.
It needs to do more in our view. And actually, by the UK remaining part of the EU, it is more likely that we would take more people with us to do things like delivering sanctions against Russia. We need to be a voice at the table, not stuck outside.
Do you think that the summit's decision to look at creating a mini military headquarters and coordinate battle groups of troops is going to cause concern in the Kremlin?
No, not at all. But I'd like to make a related point here, or share that with you, if I may. We were always told that we were scaremongering, suggesting that there were plans for an EU army. And here there are. It makes absolutely no sense at all, and it would do nothing except to undermine NATO. Our commitment should be to NATO and not to this EU fantasy army.
Should the EU be developing a military capability?
No, I don't think we should. I think absolutely the structures that we have at the moment are adequate. We need political solutions to this. We need to be working with the people of Syria to reconstruct their society, education programmes, cultural programmes.
That's not going to be easy, is it? The place is still at war.
I mean,
and Mr. Assad is still in power. I mean, that's, to be honest, that's meaningless.
No, it's not meaningless.
Well, how could you do it?
What I have been advocating very strongly for the past few weeks, as have my Social and Democrat colleagues, is we should have been actually having airdrops of aid into Syria.
Oh, really?
That didn't happen.
Over skies controlled by Russian jets?
There's ways of doing it with drones, etc. You know there is.
No, there isn't actually. We don't have a single cargo drone. The whole of Europe does not have a single drone capable of carrying cargo.
There are ways of working with partners where we could have achieved something to get aid to the people that need it. We could have worked with partners to achieve it.
Who's got them?
We could have worked with partners to achieve it.
Clearly we're not getting anywhere, so I'll move on. Now, have you had enough of elections? Well, there's another big one in January, though don't worry, you're not invited. It's a rather exclusive one just for MEPs, like the two guests we have today. They get to decide who will be president of the European Union, as well as chairing the sittings and being responsible for the smooth running of the chamber. The lucky winner also gets to represent the Parliament's views to European leaders and acts as its representative to foreign dignitaries. It's nice work if you can get it. So our Joko has been to Strasbourg, where in between her usual glasses of Glühwein, she's found out that the campaign has made a lot of MPs, or MEPs, very angry.
The city of Strasbourg, viewed by many as the home of European politics. But it's also known as the capital of Christmas, with its famous market festooned in lights. A mile up the road, the atmosphere at the European Parliament is somewhat less festive. This man, the socialist politician Martin Schulz, is stepping down as president in January. His decision has triggered a fierce leadership battle over who should replace him. There's been something of a gentleman's agreement between the two dominant players here at the Parliament. The Socialists and the centre-right European People's Party essentially divide up the 5-year presidency post between them for half a term each. So, by rights, it should be the turn of a candidate from the EPP to take over. No, says Italy's Gianni Pittella, the current leader of the Socialists in the Parliament. He wants to end the cosy arrangement of taking turns with the EPP and is putting himself forward for the presidency.
Well, you know, politics is politics. And just suddenly, because Martin Schulz has decided to go back to German politics, we would give up the fundamental political argument. This doesn't work.
That has infuriated the EPP, who had assumed that their candidate, another Italian, Antonio Tajani, would automatically get the top job.
We respected the commitment. We swallowed their candidate to be President of Parliament for the first 2.5 years of the term, and we did everything right. We respected our commitments towards them for the whole 2.5 years, and we are of course disappointed now that all of a sudden they say, oh, we want to go into another direction, we're going to present our own candidate and are not going to support your candidate as was agreed on paper and signed by them 2.5 years ago.
Others are also stepping into the frame. Helga Stevens from the European Conservatives and Reformists group, which includes British Conservative MEPs, says it's time to shake things up. So you are standing representing the third biggest party in the European Parliament for the job of presidency. People will wonder why.
Yes, people have been very happy that I'm taking a stand and have been put forward in this way. That they're excited to see a different face, a new face, somebody who can bring some fresh air to this building.
A sentiment echoed by the smaller Eurosceptic parties, who want to end what they see as an establishment stitch-up.
And what we can see is that people want something else, they want something different, and we can see that the numbers of those are growing. We see more and more referendums to come. People want to change the politics, and the great coalition of the Social Democrats and the Christians just don't want to change anything, and they just want to stick to the idea they have, and that the ever closer union.
As MEPs leave for the Christmas break, there isn't much of a whiff of political compromise in the air. But deals will have to be done, as none of the parties in the Parliament has an overall majority. And the winning candidate will need to get more than half of the votes to be elected as president on January the 17th.
And she didn't say cheers. That was Jo Coe reporting. We're joined now by the Green MEP, Jean Lambert. She's the European Greens candidate for President of the European Parliament. What do you hope to achieve by running?
Well, what we hope to achieve by running as the Greens is to open up this process. I mean, you heard there about the sort of the deals that always get done. We think it should be possible that you look at people that you think are actually going to bring something to the presidency that can maybe change the view of the public towards the European Parliament and have a greater connection with the public.
Just in terms of the process, do each of the groupings, the political groupings, they each put up one candidate?
They can put up a candidate. You don't have to. We were considering up until very early on this week in not running a candidate at all. But then we saw what was coming from the big groups and thought, come on here, you know.
Isn't it for your candidacy, isn't it rather a disadvantage of the way we voted on June the 23rd?
Well, I can see that some people would think that my group actually see this as, you know, it's as much about solidarity. And I mean, Theresa May keeps telling us that we're there, we're fully engaged until, you know, until we actually leave.
Are you worried that you might split what I might call the staunchly pro-EU vote and make way for a more Eurosceptic candidate?
I don't think that's likely. I think if you look at, you know, all of the candidates that are there, even the ones that, I mean, unless you're really talking about sort of the representative of the Front National, who, you know, I mean, hopefully will be out on the... I mean, that would be a real shock. They do have a that particular group, the ENF, is running a candidate, yes.
Who are you going to support?
Gianni Pittella.
The chap we saw on the film?
Yeah, Gianni Pittella.
He's your group, he's the Socialist and Democrat group.
But there's a reason that I'm supporting him is because, as we said, you know, we need a fresh approach. We need to communicate with citizens right across the EU, and Gianni is standing on a pro-jobs, pro-growth, anti-austerity agenda. So it's the end of any coalition. It's about actually coming with what we need for local communities right across the UK, which is jobs and growth and stability.
Hasn't European candidates, not just for the Parliament, but for various other things, been standing on that kind of platform for the past 10 years, and growth has been hard to see, and the youth of the EU or the Eurozone are enjoying mass unemployment?
Which is a fundamental problem, and as you know, we have supported the Youth Jobs Guarantee throughout the UK. I gather that your party voted against it. So that is crucially
Well, you actually
important.
voted for the Ports Directive, which is to destroy jobs.
Okay, no,
we don't want to go into that.
Let's not go there. Who are you supporting?
I'm supporting our own candidate, but I have to say it's very...
Who is your own candidate?
What?
Who?
It's actually about to be determined, but
Well, you don't know who it is.
But
No, they
it's
haven't
about to be
done it yet.
determined. But we will be putting up one.
Who's your
But
favourite?
I have to say,
No, hold on. You're not
You
going off.
haven't got a candidate yet. I checked
People
with
We
you.
haven't
expect
quite
you
got
to
a candidate
answer questions. Who do you want to be your candidate?
Sorry, I haven't decided yet.
So you don't know?
No, I do. I will know when the candidates are actually presented, but we haven't decided
Well, what's
yet.
the choice?
Sorry?
What's the choice?
There's a process which we've gone through
Why don't you
the
support
first week in January.
Jean Lambert, a bit of British solidarity here?
Jean Lambert
That would be a first.
Jean Lambert will be my second choice, because you have to be amused that essentially what happened is what's happened is that the Socialist Group have double-crossed the EPP, and we're watching this with great interest.
I don't know what that means. Could you explain that?
No,
You
I
saw
don't
in the film.
I don't know what it means either, but I really need to make a point about the EPP candidate, because the EPP candidate...
Just remind me, is that the...
Tajani.
Is that the mainstream Conservative group or the not-so-mainstream?
The mainstream Conservative
Right,
group.
so that's the Christian Democrat type group.
But Tajani is an acolyte and an ally of Berlusconi. Not all of his group voted for him. There was a big split. All of our group voted for Gianni. We cannot have an establishment figure who's close to Berlusconi being president of the European Parliament, can we, Jean? It would be a
absolutely
disaster.
true.
Whoever wins will have a role to play in Brexit.
Absolutely they will. I mean, and part of their job is actually to make sure that Parliament is fully represented within this, is involved in the discussions, and actually has a position. We have a vote at the end of the process.
Will the Green Group vote for you en masse? Is that how it works?
The Green Group will certainly support me en masse. They've said that. And then it's a question of who else one can pull in from other political groups. And, I think this is important to actually try and make it a presidency which works for the Parliament as well, which isn't just marooned in one group.
If you were to win and become President of the European Parliament, would you try to stop Brexit from taking place?
It's not our role to stop Brexit as the European Parliament. That's a decision of the British people. Our role, and particularly as President of the Parliament, is to make sure that the European Parliament is engaged in this, that our views, our knowledge is fully taken into account.
Right. When do we get the result?
17th of January.
17th of January. There we go. I'm going to put it in my diary. Now, with a Christmassy edition of our Meet the Neighbours series, Adam Fleming reports from the snowy north of Sweden.
We're going this way. I'm in Kiruna in Swedish Lapland, 90 miles north of the Arctic Circle. They're enjoying a few hours of light before the sun goes down and doesn't come up again until next year. And of course, all the way out here, you meet an Italian.
You either like it or you hate it. If you like it, it's paradise. If you don't like it, you go crazy in 2 weeks. But if you love it, if you get used to this lifestyle and environment, it's hard to go back to any other lifestyles.
It's not all dog sledding and the Northern Lights. Kiruna is also home to the world's largest underground iron ore mine. It brings jobs and one big problem. As it expands, the town is sinking. So the entire city centre is going to be torn down and moved 2 miles. 3,000 flats will be demolished, along with 200,000 square metres of public and commercial property, including the wooden church, once voted the country's favourite historic building. Deputy Mayor Stefan is going to need a bigger map.
This will be the new city centre. So if you imagine it going out like this,
As a politician, is this a blessing for your town or a bit of a curse?
It's both, because the blessing is that we can do something new, and we are getting paid to do it. We can focus on all the new technology that we have around in the world today, and doing the new, proper, environmental friendly thing to do when you're creating a city center. But the curse is that, of course, about 30% of the city's inhabitants are worried.
Down the road, the new City Hall is taking shape, although the builders are sent home when the temperature drops to minus 38 degrees. First will come infrastructure like roads and water. In 2019, residents will have to decide whether to move here or take the money for their old home. It's costing an undisclosed sum, mostly paid for by the mining company.
When it comes to other things happening here, immigration is a big topic. Sweden was one of the top 3 destination countries for asylum seekers during the migrant crisis. And when it comes to the economy, Sweden is one of the few countries in the world experimenting with negative interest rates.
And what about all those Swedish cliches?
High taxes, loads of welfare, lots of leave for when you have children and things like that. Is Sweden really like that?
Yes.
It's true.
It's true.
Anyway, enough of that stuff. Here are some more pictures of cute puppies. A Christmas gift from Politics Europe.
And a gift that is very much appreciated too, Adam, reporting from the north of Sweden. When you look at the mood music coming out of Stockholm, both by the Prime Minister and by the Foreign Secretary there, both Social Democrats, certainly the Prime Minister is, they could be, if we've got any allies, it's going to be the Swedes in these Brexit negotiations.
Yes, and also there's a big slice of public opinion in Sweden which is actually in favour of leaving. So we could be looking at Swexit.
Really? How? Really? I mean, they don't want to.
Me.
Oh, it's news to me too.
Good.
And I'm married to a Swede.
The pearls.
I mean, they don't want to join the euro. I understand that, but they don't really want to leave the EU.
No,
They're big supporters of Britain.
They're big supporters of Britain. Again, they're not in the eurozone. I was talking to a Swedish colleague yesterday that was saying it's such a shame because a lot of mutual support came from the UK and Sweden, especially in things like improving environmental standards,
and trade issues,
holding VW to account, the emissions scandal, etc., etc. So we're working very closely with our Swedish colleagues who definitely want to remain.
All right, we'll have to leave it there and we'll see. We'll keep an eye out for
keep an eye out. Keep an eye out.
That, indeed. That's it for now. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.